Well, for this next one, I've got a vase here, I'll just hold it up, and I've got some wire in there. And when I was doing this, it sort of took me back because I grew up in Northampton, so not a million miles away from here. And I've got a school friend who lived on the same road where I grew up. And I'm sure she will laugh when I say this. The excitement twice a year was when the fair came. And it used to come in Elliot's Field at the back of the house where we lived. And it was so exciting. We would come back home from, and I've got another friend I've just spotted down there, we'd come back home from the junior school in Anston, and I'd get home and then you'd see caravans starting to come in this field, and it was so, the fair was here. It was like the highlight of the year. It used to come usually twice a year. And my favourite thing was hook a duck. And it was winning those goldfish. And when I was doing this, it reminded me of, you know, like, you used to get things, it's probably health and safety and your animal rights, you wouldn't do this now. You would get a little bag, wouldn't you, with a goldfish in, and you wanted to win that goldfish. You know, you're hooking those ducks for hell for leather. And then you take your little bag home with your little goldfish in, and then you get up next morning, wouldn't you? Or 2 days later. And we all know what had happened, didn't we? It was so horrible, wasn't it? And then you'd be like really upset because you knew pet had suddenly gone over on you. But yeah, there were sort of exciting times, the fairs. And here in Hartle, you know, another excitement was, of course, when we had the carnival. You know, when the carnival happened. And in those days, it's, you know, very different to how it is now. There was the carnival field, and it was massive. You know, it was huge. It was a huge event, and the carnival parade, and the carnival queen there, you know, resplendent on that float going through the village. So all I've done here is I've just manipulated some of this Alu wire. And if anyone wants to have a try at this, it's really fantastic. We've got packets of it there. You just twist it and manipulate it, put it in a glass bowl, glass container, and then it will hold all these stems in place, and you can just use that time and time again. And, you know, I could have told a joke years ago, but it's not really relevant anymore now. I was going to say, if your telly's playing, we'll just stick this on the top and it would act as an aerial, but we don't do that anymore, do we? Well, again, I'm using some of Mr. Carter's absolutely gorgeous dailies. Tellies were a thing, weren't they, in days gone by as well? And when I trained to be a florist, one of the things you were taught was to avoid putting flowers near electrical equipment. And in books of the time, you know, tutorial books of the time, it would say, and don't ever put flowers on top of a television. Now, if you said that to any, have we got any young people? No, we're in short supply tonight, aren't we? But you know, if you said that to your grandchildren, for example, or your children, they'd look at you going out and say, well, how would you put tellies? The flowers on top of a telly? Because they're wafer thin, aren't they now? You know, they're so thin, or they're mounted on a wall. They think, what on earth are you talking about? You know, prehistoric, that idea. But of course, your television was like a piece of furniture, wasn't it? It was huge, big things, you know, with that bit of false mahogany on the top. And then people did used to put a flower arrangement on top of it. But how many times did the telly play up? And then when you went away on holiday and you got a telly in your room, never really worked proper, did it? And how many of us bent that wire coat hanger, you know, and you shoved it in the back of the telly to try and get it to actually pick up a signal? The things we used to do, folks. Well, this is another Nepeta, and this is a rather glorious one. So this is a hardy herbaceous one, Nepeta longifolia, if I can get my words out there. And if we've got any cats in the audience, you'll be going into a frenzy because it is catmint, this. So it sort of releases that odour of catnip, you know, when they've made the little bags with the catnip in. So whoever wins this tonight, you know, be careful when you get home because it might send you pussy mad. Well, something that I think we all should have in this garden is sedum, because it's fantastic, isn't it? And sedum is commonly called autumn joy, and its other common name is ice plant. And I bet you didn't know this, folks, although some of you may, because we've got some clever people here, so they might know. We call it ice plant because sedum is always ice cold. So we've had quite a hot summer this year. We've been quite lucky, really. It's been great. If you go in your garden on a hot summer's day and some of us might be suffering from a tropical moment, then just go and embrace your sedum plant and it'll cool you down. Because if you touch those stems, it's like putting your hands in the fridge. It's always ice cold. Because they are actually part of succulent group of plants. And they lock moisture into the stem. So they're great, really, because as we're moving more towards drought-tolerant gardening, they're fantastic because they don't need a lot of moisture. But if you go in your garden, you'll know that the butterflies love them, don't they? And I love to see all the butterflies and the hoverflies and all the late insects feeding from the nectar on there. It's such a joyous sight. So a few carnations in there. So can you see I'm a little bit wise holding everything in place? I was doing this once at a demonstration, well not exactly this one, but this idea once at a demonstration, and I heard a lady in the front say, fantastic what you hear from the front rows, at demonstrations. Particularly same as we're in church tonight, so I can see everybody, can't, but often if I'm demonstrating, it's in a theatre location, so you can't always see your audience, so it's, a sea of black out there, but you hear mutterings and murmurs. And I was doing this Alu Wire design, and I heard this lady say when I finished, oh, it's fantastic that. She said, I'm going to get a packet of that wire. She said, I could make one of those. And a friend said, well, I was watching him doing it, and I thought, what a clever idea, and I thought, it's like a wired bra for flowers. So every time I do it now, I have this impression that like it's a wired bra rather. I feel like I'm in Rigby and Pella. I keep thinking of things I'm going to tell you. When I was a kid, one of my first jobs, which there's people here perhaps who will remember, was in the big city in the big smoke. And from the age of 14, I got a Saturday job at C&A in Sheffield. And some of you will remember C&A on Fargate in Sheffield. And it was a great job for me because it was nepotism in full play. Because Auntie Beryl, which my family on the front row will know what I'm talking about, was the manager of C&A in Sheffield. So, we skipped the interview process and everything, and we got the Saturday job. And these were in days when at 14 you could work 4 hours a day on a Saturday. And I felt so grown up, my little uniform, catching the bus in Northampton, which was 1 hour into Sheffield. And you had the 85, which went the long way round, or you had the X4, which was fast, got you there in record time, which was about 50 minutes. But as a kid, 14, working in C&A, dead excited, this is really, really going to be great. Well, where was I put? Ladies' wear. Not even young ladies' wear, which was clock house. I was put in the old ladies' bit. And the very first, you did about 4 weeks of training. They offered you a really good training package there. But when you were let loose on the shop floor, they said, right, Mr. Moseley, we want you to go on to lingerie. Now, I think they did it on purpose, since it was downhill from there on for me, really. But I was working on lingerie, and they would come up to you and they'd say, oh, excuse me, have you got this in a double D, whatever it was, 44 cup or whatever? And then you'd have to go in this back room and search through all these like endless boxes of underwear to find out what the person wanted. It was honestly an absolute nightmare. So I said after a few weeks, I said, is there any chance I could change departments? So they said, oh, you're not happy on there? I said, well, no, I'm not really, if I'm honest. So they said, oh, leave it with us, and next Saturday we'll move you to another department. Well, they did move me. Ladies' fitting room. And this was the day when you had to shove a card in and put how many things they'd got in the things. Well, honestly, not everybody was dead honest. And you would then say, you'd go in, and they used to shout you, Jonathan, well, they didn't shout, Jonathan shout, excuse me, can you help us? And this lady's hand would come out. Can you get me that in a size 16? He says, you all came in, I know exactly what sizes you all are. Because you never forget. And then you'd have to go and bring certain items and pass them on to them. But then at the end of the day, you would go around these cubicles and sometimes there was empty hangers. Or pre-worn garments that had been exchanged for new clothes. And then you had to declare it. And honestly, if you declared like more than 5 hangers that were unaccounted for, it was like you were for the chop. You were in serious trouble then. But after a few years, I did sort of go up a level and they put me on menswear. It was like Grace Brothers. Can you remember? Honestly, it was just like Grace Brothers. You couldn't call anybody by the first name at all. So there we are, look. So just sort of mixing and matching there in the little bars.